Do you ever wonder why you're doing what you do in life? Do you wish that you could be really happy and passionate about what you do? Or maybe you already are and you want to expand in a different direction. Hi, I'm Barbara Ann, host of What the Why? I love what I do. A lot of that has to do with my story, my journey to this point in life. And guess what? Everybody has a story. So please join me for conversations with leaders from all walks of life about what they do, and more importantly, why they do it, how they found their core purpose, their passion, their mission in life. And if you're looking for your own, maybe you'll get some great suggestions on how you too can find your why.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of What the Why. If you haven't seen us before, our show features conversations with diverse leaders from all walks of life about why they do what they do and how they figured out this is what they're meant to do or their purpose. Maybe you're sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, or you feel stuck and you want to get unstuck in your company, your role, your job, your life. One thing that all of our guests have in common is at some point, most of them had some kind of similar feeling, a pivot that they wanted to make, or a mission that they wanted to pursue. And today's guest is no exception. I would like to introduce you to Andy Semotiuk. He's an author who has published 5 books. He's joining us from Toronto today, and he is a U.S. and Canadian immigration lawyer who's practiced law in Los Angeles for 10 years. Then he worked in New York for 5. And he has helped over 10,000 clients with various legal problems. Andy's a former United Nations correspondent. So we're talk about pivot. Um, and in addition to being a writer, for the last 10 years, he has written for Forbes, where his articles have been read by over 1 million readers. He previously served, this is really interesting, on the Tribunal Panel of the Canadian Human Rights Commission. So, I mean, when I keep saying that the caliber of our guests just keeps going up and up and up, I'm not kidding. He's a past president of the Canada-Ukraine Foundation, and he's a distinguished Toastmaster and communication expert. So I've been looking forward to this. We're trying to make this work out for some time. We're finally having this conversation. So without further ado, please join me in a virtual round of applause and welcoming Andy Semotiuk to our show. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. That's very nice of you. You're very gracious, and I'm very happy to be with you finally. I know we had to, get everything moving so that we could get together, and I'm glad we're finally here.
Yeah, it was meant to happen now. And man, talk about the phrase, may we live in interesting times. Um, yeah, what a perfect time, especially for those of us who live in the United States, to have this interview with you. But before we get to that, as we ask all our guests, I don't imagine that young Andy saw himself doing some of the things that you've done throughout your career. So let's start off with, what did young or little Andy want to be when he grew up?
Well, the simple things when you're very small are, be a fireman or a policeman or something of that nature. I never thought about being a writer of some sort or communicator. Over time, as I grew a little bit older, I saw myself as possibly some sort of a diplomat or political leader solving the world's problems. But I never quite got that far. So somewhere in between is where I ended up, I guess, from where I was hoping to start.
Yeah, and okay, so you found your middle ground, which is fascinating. So how does one go from, you know, basically being well, you're an attorney,
Right.
um, as well as also a correspondent. Walk us through that path, this
Okay.
fascinating path of being an immigration and lawyer and a United Nations correspondent and an author in Forbes.
Okay. There were three main themes to my life. One was communication, and that was largely influenced by the fact that I grew up in a home. My mother was hard of hearing, she was deaf. So communication was an important part of our life. And I think that's where that came from. A second part was law. And that came from sort of the combined immigrant experience and, the world as it was with all the problems there are in the world. And I was thinking, as I was growing up, I was thinking, oh, people, if they only knew the law, they could sort out all these problems. It's not something so difficult. You just have to know the law. And that's how I ended up in law. And I already mentioned the immigrant experience as a third sort of feature of my life, where in view of I myself was an immigrant in the sense that I was going to the United States and going back and forth from Canada, but more my parents came from overseas and came into, North America. So those are the three kind of themes. But I'll just say this. I went to university at UBC in Vancouver. And to just show you how strange life is, in the first year of university, I took an English language course. Well, actually, it was just an English course, literature, not language. And in that course, we studied John Donne, who was a poet, and he wrote a sonnet called Death. And the sonnet went, "Death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty, for thou art not so," and so on. And our professor assigned us the task of writing essays about this sonnet and saying, why is it so good? And I thought, well, I could do that. I wrote an essay, submitted. When I got the paper back, it was an F. And I thought, what? F?
Oh.
So I went to see the prof. He says, yeah, you're a poor writer. There's nothing, you got to rewrite this thing, rewrite it. So I rewrote it and back again, F. And I ended up during the course of that year submitting essays on John Donne's poem 5 times. And finally, at the end of the year, the professor took pity on me and gave me a 50% so I could go through with English and continue my studies at university. That's how poor my writing was. And if
Wow.
that professor today learned that I am a Forbes writer and I worked at the UN and a journalist, he would roll over in his grave. I'm like, how's that possible? But meanwhile, I thought, I'm I'm interested in communication, and I'm particularly interested in presentations, speaking skills. So
Mhm.
I joined Toastmasters, and as you mentioned, in your introduction, I've joined, I became heavily involved in Toastmasters. And in fact, just above me here, there's a plaque on the wall. It
Mhm.
signifies I'm a distinguished Toastmaster. I spent 35 years going to Toastmasters meetings where we presented ideas and then gave feedback to people who were there giving presentations. And I ultimately ended up a distinguished Toastmaster, which is as high as you can get up in the Toastmasters organization, which is dedicated to effective public speaking and leadership skills. And I thought, that's really where I want to be. Forget this writing. I'm so pathetic. I want to be in Toastmasters, or at least a public speaker, or a professional speaker. But the world said to me, no, 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 Andy, that's not where we want you. We want you writing. And so I took this like torturous journey of writing articles and, letters and memoranda and so on. And inch by inch, learning how to write better, better, better. And over time, I submitted articles to student publications and then, to newspapers and so on, ultimately to the point where I actually ended up at the UN, and I wrote for a group in Canada called Southern News Services, which had newspapers across the country. And I was their representative at the UN, as in part with others as well. Um, and then, like you mentioned, Forbes. Now, at the beginning of the journey, you were asking me about, like what was I thinking about when I was a kid? Okay, not quite when I was a kid, but at least at university, I'm thinking, okay, that's the kind of journey I want to go.
Mhm.
But I've ended up being a writer.
Wow.
However, these two things kind of united for me to the point where today I'm talking to you. Now, the legal side was, I'm going through university, I got to have some sort of a profession. And I thought, well, I can help, with my mother with the business side of her life. And I can also maybe be some kind of a diplomat in the world to, solve world problems.
Wow.
So that's all how it all combined together to take me to where I am here with you today.
Wow. Wow. And, it's interesting that you went into immigration law because you wanted to help solve world problems,
Yeah,
which is very unique compared to a lot of answers you would hear from other attorneys.
yeah.
Um, so, 10,000 clients, to the extent that you can share, um, what are some of the types of legal challenges that you help them navigate along the
Okay.
way?
Yeah. I'll just share one experience that was kind of unique for me. While I was a lawyer in the beginning, uh, there was a coup in Fiji, the country of Fiji, and there were several people who came from Fiji to Canada. Back then, I was in Edmonton, Alberta, and I was just early in my career. And I, met them and I started taking an interest in their case. They were all what you call refugees or asylum seekers.
Hmm.
And I thought to myself, I had to present their case in court. And to do it properly, I thought I need to collect evidence. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fly to Fiji and find out and actually film video what's going on there so I could then show it in court. And so I flew to Fiji and I met up with another guy from Vancouver who was also in Fiji at the time, a guy named Jas Mangat, another lawyer. And we spent, I don't know, maybe about 2 weeks or whatever there collecting evidence, live video evidence about the coup and what was going on. And basically, the story there was the country is divided between two groups, a native group, the indigenous people
Hmm.
of Fiji, and Indo-Fijians who were brought to Fiji from India as sort of indentured workers. And the government teeter-tottered between these two groups. And at that time, the indigenous group took power from the predominant Indo-Fijian group.
Hmm.
And so it was an interesting time. I met a lot of leaders there that we filmed and came back, and we used that film to represent refugee claimants. At one time, I represented 300 refugee claimants with their cases. So that
Wow.
was an interesting experience for me.
Yeah. How did you find the courage to basically walk into what was the middle of a coup where, people were fleeing and you're running towards it?
Yeah. Um, well, it wasn't as risky as maybe it might sound because I was neither Indo-Fijian nor indigenous. I was an outsider. Now, they wouldn't exactly, stand up and give me a standing ovation for arriving. And so basically what happened is I kind of secretly came in like I'm a guy with a camera and running around the country, privately meeting with former deposed leaders and interviewing them on camera. And by the time they really figured out who is this guy, I was already gone out of the country. So it was a risk, but fortunately, I didn't, I didn't suffer because of it, and it was a unique experience for me. I had a lot of respect for the people who fled, and it also cultivated a sense of respect for democracy and how the rule of law and stuff like that in me as a younger lawyer. Um, so that's just one example of many that I dealt with. I mean, I did the whole gamut of all kinds of people with immigration problems, deportation cases, and going to court, trying to correct problems with. One case that I had was a lady in Canada was trying to sponsor a husband who was 20 years older than the lady. And the case was rejected, so we had to go to court to see if we could win the case for the older lady.
Oh,
And the judge didn't like it because you know what the heck? I mean, how can this be? An older lady is it didn't make sense. And my argument there was I don't know if you remember, but there was a guy named Pierre Trudeau who was the
oh
Prime
yeah.
Minister of Canada. Well,
Hmm.
he married a young girl 20 years younger than him. So my argument was if the Prime Minister of Canada can marry someone 20 years younger, and that's okay, what's wrong with a lady marrying someone 20 years younger and
Yep.
sponsor? Well, it didn't go over so well. I lost that one.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, because that's, well, we could do a whole separate show just on that one, but
yeah,
that's becoming more and more common. If guys can do it, women can do it too.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, you don't really think about that as being, an immigration case in, especially for those of us who are here in the United States, but it is. It really is. I mean, even our
yeah,
current president, his wife was an immigrant here.
yes.
Um, and so with that comes all kinds of different potential scenarios. So I can only imagine what you've seen throughout the course of your career. And but
Not every case is very comfortable. The uh, one area that was a little touchy for me was suppose someone did something wrong, like sexual assault or something like this.
mm,
And just as an example, there was a client of mine who, for some reason, uh, assaulted, sat on a subway and was feeling up female, uh, the legs of female sitting next to him. And that was like 20 years ago or whatever, and he was trying to get a waiver to go to the United States. So there's a case like that. It's a it's a delicate thing.
hmm.
Uh, I'm no fan of people who are like misbehaving themselves, and
Sure.
uh,
But
but
they do still deserve representation.
yeah. So in that case, the issue was he really feeling these women up, or was it just like he was sitting close and the subway's full of people and he's sitting there and his hand slipped over and it was sort of like a judgment call there.
Hmm.
That was what the issue ended up being. And they lead evidence of like spotless behavior, someone, well known in the community, lots of letters of support from people and stuff like that. And so then you think, well, and it happened like 25 years ago, you know,
At a different time
yeah,
when behavior like that, interestingly, was more accepted.
yeah.
That was just considered, oh, that's just, someone who has been through that on the other side of things. You know,
Not,
it
yeah,
was a different time. It really
I,
was.
I won't, well, I would argue, I just argue, one person's perception could be another person's, crime.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sort of like on the edge there.
Yep.
Uh, Actually, I'm just trying to think where we ended up with that fellow. I think he was trying to get a visa to visit the United States. I think he got it. Uh, and there are rules that they follow in terms of
Yep.
deciding whether a person is he a danger to the society, is he going to be misbehaving himself if he comes into the country, these kind of
Mm-hmm.
considerations, how long ago was it? What kind of credibility does he have? There's a whole realm of things that you go through and you kind of weigh it on a scale, and whatever goes, then that's the way it goes.
Wow. So let's pivot into your books.
Mhm.
5 books. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Um, you know,
I've got one in particular that I think sort of is in harmony with where you're headed and the kind of values that you have, which is called A Young Professional. And it's called The Young Professional Book. And the book talks about three themes. One is money, second is time, and the third is balance. And sort of, if I had to kind of put it into a statement, I would say it's the art of life management, how to deal with money, time, and balance. And so in the book, first of all, with regard to money, I guess the place to start is one of the questions that you, I think, are kind of tuned in on, which is sort of the philosophical larger picture. Two questions that we all face. One is, why am I here? Who am I is one. And the second one is, why am I here?
yes.
With a question about who am I, that's a question about values deep down. What
Mm-hmm.
are your values? What do you stand for?
Yeah.
What matters to you and why? And then why am I here? It kind of harmonizes with the question as to what's the purpose of life? And sometimes when I meet with young people and I talk with them, I ask them, oh, so what do you think is the purpose of life? And so they'll give me answers. They'll say, well, to love everyone, or you know, to to be everything you can be, or to love, to live, and to leave a legacy, answers like that, or to pursue meaningful goals, and achieve meaningful results. These are good answers. I mean, it's hard to quibble with these answers. I think there's some truth to every one of them.
Yep.
But I like one particular sort of angle on it that I like to share with young people, and that is to find your unique ability and put it into the service of others. And sometimes, if you're you know, like religious, you can say to find your unique God-given
Right.
unique ability and put it into the purpose of others. What,
Yep.
what, no matter how you define God, like from your point of view, what is,
Yep.
God? I think that's a good formula to suggest to people, and particularly because your unique ability corresponds with why you're on this earth. Like if you're working in your unique ability, there's a passion in there that you have that drives you. Um, and I would say that's a definition of what is a unique ability. If you don't have the passion for what you're doing, if you're at a job flipping hamburgers at McDonald's and you're not passionate about it, that's not your unique ability. And it goes
Yeah.
back to the earlier sort of commentary I made about my, my Toastmasters and all this stuff. Like I thought that my unique ability was, speaking and so on. But the world said, no, 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 you have to write and get better and better and better. So there's a kind of a cross that you have to, what does the world want from you? Plus, what are you good at? You have to find that hot spot there.
Agreed.
Right.
Absolutely agreed. In fact, Purpose-Filled is a member. We should talk. Shout out to Genius is Common. What you just described, you know, for some people to clean a hospital is just a job. For some, it's a step up. For some, it's a calling. That's what they firmly believe. They're making a difference by helping to sanitize space. And so, how we show up, what we're passionate about, whether it is, writing articles for Forbes or, being a landscaper, so much of how healthy we even are is based on whether or not we feel like we're living our purpose. Hence purposeful solutions and evolutions. But you
I
know,
like that.
thank you. That said, so let's talk about articles that you've written. I mean, a
Okay.
million readers. I mean, it's you've helped over 10,000 people
Yeah.
navigate the immigration system.
Mhm.
You've reached over a million people with articles you've written. Tell us about some of the content that you've shared your brilliance with through Forbes.
Okay. Yeah. One article alone got a million readers, which was, uh, it's funny, I should say this. It was about the shutdown of the government, but not this shutdown, the previous shutdown. Because there was and the title of the article was something like a looming shutdown of the government, is ominous for immigrants.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, that was a pretty good article in terms of response. So I'll try and write an article similar to that now because there's a shutdown right now in the United States, right?
Yes,
So
there is.
there's a million readers over there. So I wrote it. I published it today. Here's how many readers I got. I got over 100 readers today.
Just
Just
today. And
100.
it just
That
hit.
no, it's not going anywhere. There's something different. And that just tells you, why would a million people be so interested in the article last time there was a shutdown and only 100? Like it's been up on Forbes for, let's see, about 5 hours. This article I wrote today. Why would only 100 readers be reading it today? And
That's a,
I can tell you a little bit about that. Isn't
sure.
that a curious thing? When you
Yeah.
find that curious?
Yes and
Uh,
no, but I would love to hear what you think about it as someone who's
okay,
from outside the United States who wrote this very important article.
okay. Part of it is the way articles are presented now online. Back then, the formula was publish the article, get it out, and you make money, Forbes that is, from advertising revenue. So there
Hmm.
was no paywall. Today, there's a paywall. So there's a reluctance on the part of readers to want to get in, to read the article. So the number of people who are reading is smaller, like way smaller.
Hmm.
Um, in today's world, my experience is if I'm hitting something between 5,000 and 10,000 readers, that's a pretty good article
Wow.
compared to what it was before.
Wow.
Um, because, to get 5,000 people to pay to read your article, that's quite an accomplishment
Hmm.
in from where I'm sitting, Now, it's really hard to predict, what topic is going to really hit people. So I've had articles, where say like 250,000 readers would respond, 150,000 and so on like that. And What it does to me, the fact that I've got 100 readers today, what it tells me is, hey, Andy, you're not God. You don't know everything. You
Mm.
need a lesson in humility too, like, wake up, do better, do a
That's,
better job.
you know what? And that's a beautiful way to frame it.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, we're actually almost at time. So, um, and I love the fact, interestingly, I had a conversation earlier with someone who thought that they needed to accomplish everything that they were going to accomplish before they turned 40 and they're 38. And I was talking about how so many people do so many amazing things so many years later.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're a perfect example of that. You,
Well, I, uh, let me just say this might be very helpful. I mentioned I was a member of Toastmaster for many years.
Mhm.
One day, the international president of Toastmasters came to Toronto. Uh, I think her name was Johnston. I'm not sure, but I think that Pat Johnson, I think was her name. And I thought, wow, okay, I want to meet this person, like I never met her before. And we're meeting somewhere in another part of the city I've never been to before. And the people who were there are people I didn't really know that very well. But it was a chance to meet the international, president. So I drove down. I came late because I didn't know where I was going, and
Mhm.
finally found the place. I showed up, opened the door. Oh, I'm here. They let me in. They're already meeting. They've already started the meeting, and so on. I come in, and I don't know who's who in the build. So I see one lady sitting apparently at the head of a kind of a group of people. So I go up to her. I say, "Hello, I'm Andy Semotiuk. And it's a real honor to meet you." And she said, "Yeah, well, I'm not bad." She's sitting over there. So I
Oh,
kind of made a fool of myself right off the bat. Um, but anyway, I sat through the meeting and I had a chance to ask her a question. And the question was, you're a leader. There's like 330,000 Toastmasters worldwide. You're the leader of the organization. What, what is a quality that you have to have as a leader to be a leader of an organization so big like that? And the answer she gave me was humility. Humility. And I thought, wow, humility. I wouldn't have guessed that, but I think she's right.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a key quality for good leaders, humility.
Yes.
We could use more humility in the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is actually the perfect note on which to end. And, you know, love to have you back at some point and continue the conversation, after you've written a couple more books. So, but for those who would like to find you, your information will be included in the links that are available with this recording. But real quick, what's the easiest way for people to find you?
I work for Pace Law Firm in Toronto. So Pace, Pace law firm.com. You can find me that way. And my books are all on Amazon if anybody wants a book. Andy Semotiuk, my last name is spelled Semotiuk. Just look up my name, you'll find my books.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so glad. I purposefully avoided the political situation to the extent possible here. But having you on and having your information out there, there couldn't be a better time for people to know where to find you, and know who they're contacting when they do so. And so thank you again for being on our show today. And
Brad, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it a lot.
awesome. And for those of you who are tuning in, thank you so much as always for joining us. You have so many different options out there, podcasts to listen to and videos to watch. And so we really value and appreciate the fact that you take the time to watch ours. And, please feel free to share this with others that you think will benefit from our content. And also, please always remember No matter whether you're looking to make changes in your life that are big or small, tune in again for more informational, illuminating, and inspirational conversations with guests such as Andy, who looked at what the different things were out there, navigated and challenged the possibilities to find his core purpose and live it.